guys, how's it going? It's Al. Week 9, and I've got your wide receiver rankings. The top 24 wide receivers that I think you have to look at in this order this week. Now, my rankings don't always match anybody else's rankings that you're looking at. They don't necessarily match the rankings at Fantasy Pros. I rank them based on my projections. Sometimes that's based on matchups, sometimes trends, ways that I think things are going in terms of routes run, specifically at this position, sometimes in terms of increasing target shares, or with the trading deadline gone, changes in team makeup. So if a player is ranked lower than you think, when you make your rankings video, rank them wherever you want. But if you have start sit questions, start the guy that I have higher. So let's go.
He's a legend.
The Smiz Gang Listener League is posted for week 9. It is a 4,500 man tournament. The only way that you can find this tournament is through my link. So go to smizzle.tv/links. It does not exist in the lobby. It is a $10 game as always, 3 max as always, and it's also a no rake tournament. Absolutely no service fee. The best tournament that exists on DraftKings. Make sure that you get in there, and I will shout out the top 10 finishers on Monday on the weekly recap videos. Get your entries today. The number 1 wide receiver that I have for this week is Tyreek Hill. It's been basically Cooper Kupp the entire year, but Tyreek Hill has just climbed and climbed and climbed. Massive ceiling every single week, on pace for an NFL record 2,000 yards receiving and all of the touchdown upside that should theoretically go along with it, but he has not scored a touchdown through the air since week 2. So there should be some regression coming for Tyreek Hill with as many targets, as many catches, the big playability that he has. He's ripped off a 42-yarder, a 21-yarder, a 28-yarder. In week 4, a 64-yarder, all each, for the last 5 weeks. So like with that sort of big playability, the offense that they run, his skill set, the 2 touchdowns that he's seen this year is way below what his expected touchdown rate should have been. There's going to be an avalanche of touchdowns in the second half from Tyreek Hill. I want to be in before that starts happening rather than late. So I have him as my number 1 guy this week. At number 2, Justin Jefferson. Look, we can go pretty quickly through the top 5 or 6 because we kind of know what they are. Justin Jefferson, absolutely amazing. Really high floor in PPR based on the target market share. Excellent at getting open. Has gotten over 100 yards from scrimmage 3 of the last 4 weeks. Got 98 yards last week. Has not scored a touchdown since week 1. Also, 3 touchdowns on the year. Massive regression coming his way as well. Somebody who has scored a bunch of touchdowns this year is Stephon Diggs. This was a guy who we knew regression was coming for in terms of touchdowns. He did not score anywhere near the amount of touchdowns that he should have in 2021 because of how much usage he got in the red zone, and also in terms of end zone targets. This year, all that is being realized. 3 touchdowns in each of the last 3 weeks, 7 touchdowns over the course of the whole year. They square up against the Jets, who do have really good cornerbacks. However, I'm not sure that anything is going to be able to stop the Buffalo Bills, Josh Allen, and Stephon Diggs, as he has had tough matchups throughout this season, right? He hosted Jalen Ramsey in week 1 for 122 and a touchdown. He has faced off against Green Bay, who has good cornerbacks. Like, it does not matter. He is matchup proof. You can think that it's going to take him down a little bit in terms of efficiency, but volume alone, because of how much they throw the ball over expectation in Buffalo, Steph Diggs is just a monster. At number 4, for the first time, out of the number 1 spot, and I've dropped him to 4, partially because of I'm mad at Sean McVay for down 3 scores in the final minute of a game, throwing a screen pass to Cooper Kupp where he went down with an ankle injury and didn't get up for a little bit. Like, they say he's going to be fine, but maybe it's something that could hamper him just a little bit. He is still going to be an amazing wide receiver. He's still going to get a lot of targets. He's got 12 targets in that game at debacle last week against San Francisco. Scored 22.9 points, averaging 26.4 on the year. I had to ding him a little bit, not because of him, but just because, Sean McVay is he's a super smart guy, but is also sometimes has idiot tendencies. And that play at the end of the game was idiot tendencies come to life. DeAndre Hopkins slides in at number 5. So, just let everybody use PEDs. Just let him do it. Why not? Spent 6 games on the suspended list for using performance enhancing drugs, something that popped on a test. And then he comes back and he has 27 targets over the first 2 games with a touchdown. 36.9 fantasy points last week, 23.3. If he puts up another game like that, he's going to break into that top 4 with Hill and Jefferson and Diggs and Kupp. DeAndre Hopkins has been outstanding so far. We'll see if it can sustain, persist through this week's matchup with Seattle, which has been a tasty one all season long. T. Higgins slides up to number 6 this week in the absence of Jamar Chase, who got injured. He's got a broken hip. Like, what is Jamar Chase like the oldest 22-year-old ever that he's got a broken hip? Like, this is new. This is new for me. Anyway, T. Higgins moves into what should be a higher volume role in terms of his expected target percentage. The game against Cleveland, in division matchup, tougher spot. Carolina, not as tough a spot. It's not. So really good floor, right? If we consider his last 2 games or last 3 games as a floor, 10.7, 14.3, 13.9. He did catch a late touchdown, a 41-yarder on that Monday Night Football game. Carolina has allowed a lot more points this year than through the air. I kind of like this spot for T. Higgins, and I absolutely love the volume. 10 targets incoming for T. Higgins this week. I have him just ahead of Davante Adams because I kind of feel like they're going to go run heavy in this game to try and reestablish things. They're going to throw the ball to Adams, but like we've seen a massive dip the last 3 games that the Raiders have played, giving him 5 targets, 9 targets, 7 targets. So while that doesn't, 21 targets over the last 3 games is 7 a game. For most guys, that would be an outstanding stretch. For Davante Adams, that's horrible, considering that he needs volume to eat. He's got 5 touchdowns on the year, but he is a high volume wide receiver. We need him to be that. And I'm not sure that the Raiders offense can sustain that predictably week in and week out. He's going to have games where he absolutely flashes, where, this is not about Davante Adams' talent. He is still one of the most talented wide receivers in the league. It's more about volume, because fantasy is not about a talent assessment as much. Like, obviously we want talent, but it's more about opportunity. So when talent meets opportunity, like it has with Tyreek and Jefferson and Diggs and Kupp and all those sorts of things, we get magical fantasy seasons. But like, we have the opposite here with Davante Adams, where it's been a roller coaster, where we see a floor of like 9 instead of like a usual floor of 15 to 18 from Davante Adams, averaging 18.3 on the year. You're starting him if you have him. I'm not telling you to bench him. That's not where we're going with this, but like a disappointing season, somewhat predictably so. He was on our do not draft list coming into the year. At number 8, Amon-Ra St. Brown. Like, at some point, I know that I've probably been higher than the field, or like higher than what he has actually produced the last couple of weeks. Some due to injury. 1 week he had he left with the concussion that wasn't probably as a result of the Tua concussions, where teams are being now super careful about putting players back into games where they get concussed. Had a nice game last week, not an amazing game. Had 10 targets, caught 7 of them, 13.9 fantasy points, averaging 16.2 on the year. However, with the Lions dealing TJ Hawkinson and his 17% share of the targets, there aren't that many other players that can reliably earn targets on the Lions. You have Josh Reynolds, he's fine, right? He's not a bad player. I'm not saying they're bad players, but they're all just like fine. They're not guys who are going to be able to sustain getting 22+% of the target market share, which kind of leans towards Amon-Ra St. Brown now for the rest of the season, living in that 30% plus spot, like we saw him get late last year, the run-in that he had to the end of the season, where 8 catches in every game, 10 plus targets in every game, 30+% the target market share, possibly as high as 33 or 35% of the target market share. So Amon-Ra St. Brown is a very arrow up player, and based on the volume that he sees the next couple of weeks, I may have to rank him ahead of somebody like Davante Adams and definitely T. Higgins until Jamar Chase gets back. But like, I'm in that let's be safe, let's play the in the ranking system. Like, Amon-Ra St. Brown is 8, but he's 8 with a bullet, and in future weeks he could go up. If you have somebody that's asleep at the wheel in your league and you can go out and get Amon-Ra St. Brown, definitely go get him. And while you're doing that, drop a like on the video, subscribe to the channel, ring the notifications bell, all those sorts of things. It greatly helps the channel. Leave me a reply down below with what you think about Amon-Ra St. Brown the rest of the season. What kind of targets per game do you think that he's going to get? Jalen Waddle slides in at number 9. I saw a ridiculous graphic from DraftKings yesterday. It's like the top 5 receiver duos in the league. And most of them, numbers 2 through 5, all have between like 1,000 and 1,100 yards receiving. But Jalen Waddle and Tyreek Hill have like 1,600. It's like they're the easiest double. Like, if you drafted Waddle, I think he was going in the late 3rd round of drafts. Sometimes he'd slide into the 4th, and you were spending a 2nd rounder on Tyreek Hill. And then you picked up Tua later in the draft, you're sitting on an absolute gold mine in best ball because of the weeks that they don't produce. Maybe you have somebody else that leapfrogs them, but so much production from this duo. So I can't rank him any lower. It's just impossible. I can't. He's too consistent with the amount of targets and the possibility of upside, just game-breaking, week-winning upside from him. He's had the 100 yards or more in 4 of his games this year, 2 touchdowns last week. This team is rolling now once again now that Tua is back under center. I love this offense. This was a target spot for us all season long in daily fantasy. I didn't pull the trigger as much as I wanted to before the season on it because of the high price of Waddle and Hill. Some of the question marks, I was getting one or the other and not stacking both of them. My mistake. At number 10, A.J. Brown, coming off of just an absolutely monstrous game. I have him here because, like, I'm sure somebody's going to say in the reply, how do you have A.J. Brown at 10 coming off of a 42.5 point fantasy day? Well, they're favored by like 13. It's entirely possible that A.J. Brown could get 2 touchdowns, but I try not to bank on touchdowns. I want volume. And this does not look like it's going to be a high volume game, but there could be some high variances. Houston's defense is really bad. The Eagles favored by like 13, 14 points this week. If they have like 30 points at halftime, it's entirely possible that A.J. Brown is going to have eaten with possibly a touchdown, maybe more. But as much as they like to spread the ball around, as many options as they have in the passing game, as well as Jalen Hurts on the ground and 3 other running backs who can contribute, I love the Eagles offense in total. I like the Eagles offense this week. I'm not sure that I would start A.J. Brown over Amon-Ra St. Brown, Devontae Adams, or Jalen Waddle. But if you've got him, you're playing him, and you're hoping that he gets into the end zone. DJ Moore is behind him at number 11. No other receiver, like 1 or 2, have seen the consistent volume that DJ Moore has gotten in terms of target market share on the year. He's been outstanding. Yes, he took off his helmet. I'm sure that he's sad about that. He cost his team a game, but like the franchise, like, hey, great, we're in the running to get one of those top 3 quarterbacks. Whether it's, you know, Stroud or Hooker or the kid at Bama, it's like, great. You know, Bryce Young, outstanding. Good job. Way to look good for us. And then he's just going to get 10 targets, guys, like every single week. It squares off against Cincinnati. 8 target floor, right? Touchdowns are going to be somewhat tougher to come by, though he does have 1 in each of the last 2 weeks. 21 targets the last 2 weeks. Really high floor, questionable ceiling guy, but really safe in PPR. Mike Evans rounds out my wide receiver ones. He is in the 12 spot. Now, we gotta hope, right? We have to hope that Tom Brady and this Tampa Bay offense just turns the corner. But the volume's been great. 26 targets the last 2 weeks, 11 last week, 15 in week 7. 18 fantasy points, 21.3, averaging 17.2 on the year, only has 3 touchdowns, the league leader. Before 2022, the league leader for the trailing 3 years in terms of receiving touchdowns. Him and Tom Brady definitely have great communication, great instincts together, and Brady leans towards him when they get into the red zone, close to the end zone, as well as taking deep shots to him. A 51-yard catch, over a 20-yard reception every single game this year. So Mike Evans rounds out at number 12. No Kid Hungry does a great job at providing school breakfasts, lunches, and at-home care for food insecure kids all across the country. We're trying to raise $50,000 from the community, that's you, and every $10,000 the community raises, I will be matching $10,000 myself up to $50,000, giving us a combined $100,000 raised for No Kid Hungry in 2022. We just passed 40K. The next match is at $50,000. So if you've enjoyed the content this season, if you've won some money in daily fantasy, either on your own or as a result, or if you just want to take part in something, to be a part of something bigger than yourself, go to smizzle.tv/charity. All donations are 100% tax deductible. They will take care of it through Tiltify. Please give what you can. Every single dollar helps to No Kid Hungry. And let's try to get to that next match together. At number 13 on the same team, Chris Godwin. Double-digit targets in 4 of his last 5, but no touchdowns. Not doing a great job of getting open, but he is definitely getting a lot of targets, as we've seen. The knee injury, the hamstring injury have kind of hampered him this year, but he's kind of been safe. 12 fantasy points per game. Since he came back from that week 1 injury, he has not scored less than 11.5 in a game, but he has not had any more than 15.5 PPR points in any game. Has not gotten you over 100 yards, has not scored a touchdown. He's being somewhat limited, as one would expect in their first year back from an ACL. But based on the volume, and that's what I like to focus on more than anything, because volume is more predictable than touchdowns, definitely more predictable than broken plays. He's safe, right? So like if you spent that 5th round pick on Chris Godwin, you can keep starting him. He's playing against the Rams this week. I'm assuming that if Jalen Ramsey shadows, he's going to shadow the other side, which could guide more targets to the opposite side with Chris Godwin. But neither offensive line, the Rams or Tampa Bay, has done exceptionally well. This game has a much lower total than one would have expected, right? Last year, this game would have had like a 52-53 total over under. This year it's 42 because of how bad these offensive lines are, as inefficient as they've been offensively, both on a per play basis and overall. So you got him, you're starting him. It is what it is. Keenan Allen is number 14. I'm assuming that Allen comes back from injury this week. He should be fine if he's back. They play against Atlanta, allowing some of the most possessions per game, the most trips to the red zone, very inefficient at stopping teams from scoring touchdowns once they are in the red zone against them. So Keenan Allen has a much more heightened touchdown expectancy this week and should bounce back to the same volume that he normally gets, which is around 9 to 13 targets, specifically in the absence of Mike Williams, who was injured for a little while. DK Metcalf, the man who plays through a knee injury. We thought that he was going to be done for the season with that patella. He logged 10 targets, caught a touchdown. Although he didn't look as explosive as he has in the past. 9.2 average yards per catch, a long of 15 last week. We need to see if he can get deep. He did have a really great play, a very heady play, where there was a run play that was coming in behind him, and he faked a route to the back of the end, faked the fade route, and the cornerback bit on it. So instead of like blocking the cornerback, he just got the cornerback to run away from Ken Walker, and he scored a touchdown on that play. So kind of like the headiness from DK Metcalf. You're not going to see that in the fantasy score, but like it's a play that you should look up. It was really cool to see that. Tyler Boyd slides in at number 16. Same situation, should theoretically see more targets predictably, right? So like while before the Jamar Chase injury, he was sitting between like, I don't know, 3 to 5, 6 targets a game. He should live in the 4 to 8 target a game range here, which gets him onto the top 24 for the first time this season. Michael Pittman is at number 17. Very good talent. Saw good volume in Ellinger's first game. Unfortunately, he dropped a really big catch late in that game that would have gone for like 20 yards. It was like a 15-yard pass, 12 to 15-yard pass, and he had running room after it, and it was in his hands, and then he dropped it. I like the fact that they were still throwing the ball his way. Solid floor. The ceiling possibly has evaporated. Only 1 touchdown on the season, and this is not going to be a very high scoring offense with the problems that they have on the offensive line. Hopefully Ellinger can right the ship as he gets more experience under center. They get New England this week, who plays very slow, big run the ball over expectation team. So Pittman is here. He's still in the top 24, but at a season low spot for him at 17. Behind him at 18, I have Juju Smith-Schuster. Yes, they traded for Kadarius Toney. No, I do not believe that Kadarius Toney is going to play a mountain of snaps yet, or eat into Juju Smith-Schuster's routes, snaps, or workload. Basically, I'm expecting 8 targets a game from Juju Smith-Schuster every game. He has gotten that in every game this year except week 6 and week 2. 8 against Arizona, 8 against Indy, 8 against Tampa Bay, 8 against Las Vegas, 8 against San Francisco. I'm going to go ahead and pencil in 8 targets this week against Tennessee. They have an island game in this one, so you get to watch them with your popcorn and your hot wings and everything else on Sunday night. So enjoy the game, and hopefully if you're behind, Juju will catch 5, 6, 7 of those balls. He's done much better the last 2 games than he was really adapting to this offense and adapting to where he had to be, not catching a lot of the targets that were headed his way, catching like 5 of 8, 5 of 8, 6 of 8. The last 2 weeks, he has caught 12 of the 13 balls that have headed his way, has topped 100 yards in both of those games, has had a 42 and a 45-yard long in week 6, 42, week 7, 45, and a touchdown in each. So like Juju's starting to come around and seems more comfortable in this offense and has built more of a relationship with Patrick Mahomes, where the trust level seems to be more solid with the two of them. So pencil in those 8 targets and move along to number 19, to Tyler Lockett. They play Arizona this week. High total in this one. 2 straight games with 8 targets, 15.1 fantasy points on the year. Tyler Lockett is just kind of a solid play. And the more that both of them are healthy, the more that DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett are both in the game, they both have solid floors, and both of them, as we know, can go nuclear, but they're more floor than ceiling plays to me. We've seen one 30-point game from Tyler Lockett this year. They happen inconsistently, right? It's not like some of the higher ranked guys where it's like, 25 to 35 is right in their wheelhouse. Tyler Lockett always, when you don't expect it, has that 150-yard 3-touchdown game. They just happen randomly, 2-3 touchdown games for him. It's not based on matchup. It's not based on it. Just sometimes he just gets loose behind the defense. Hard to predict. So that solid floor keeps him on the list, but realize that he can have a bigger game for you here or there. Devontae Smith slides in right behind him at number 20, the secondary option. This is why Philadelphia is going to be tough this week. All of their players are going to pop on projection because of the heightened touchdown expectation playing against the Houston Texans. However, they're going to have to put up those points and be extremely efficient, because the more that they get up in this game, either Houston's going to have to score touchdowns, right? You can't beat Philly or have an expectation of staying close to Philly if you punt or kick field goals. And I'm not seeing very many ways for this Houston offense to be hyper efficient against Philly's fantastic defense. So you just have to hope that Smith gets a touchdown in the first half. There may not be that many opportunities in the second half for him to pay off, but the volume has been solid. He's a very good player and gets to run against man-to-man coverage all the time. Curtis Samuel, high floor, not a great ceiling, but sneaks in this week because of all the bye weeks. There's just so many bye weeks this week of teams that have really great players that would be on this list. So we have 3 new entries. Samuel, the third one, making his debut in our top 24 on the season. 12.8 fantasy points per game. Hasn't scored a touchdown since week 2. When he was week 1 and 2, he had this like monstrous usage inside the red zone. The way that they've gone the last couple of weeks is they're cutting some of his targets, but they're getting him back more involved in the running game, which was absent for 3 weeks. They did that in the first 3 weeks where they were giving him a lot of targets, 10 targets per game, weeks 1, 2, and 3, and then mixing in 3 or 4 run plays for him as well. The last few weeks, he's gotten 17 targets the last 3 games that they've played, and then 9 carries in the last 2 games total. So they're trying to get back to that week 1 system that they had. The team is just kind of a mishmash, kind of a little bit of a mess, because the 3-headed running back monster, now you add Curtis Samuel to that as getting some running plays, and we would prefer targets to rushes, as they're worth 2.3 times as many expected fantasy points. Right behind him, Terry McLaurin. McLaurin has been unlocked because of Heineke, right? Like, they just weren't throwing the ball. There was no connection, realistically speaking, between him and Wentz. It was very inconsistent the last couple of weeks, though, taking deeper shots down the field to Terry McLaurin. That's what you have to do. In the games that Heineke has started, 19.6, 18.3 fantasy points the last 2 weeks. On the season, including those 2 games, averaging 13.4 fantasy points. We'll see if that maintains and if that continues. A 42-yard catch in week 8, a 37-yard catch in week 7. So, like, I'm confident that Terry McLaurin stays on this list. We'll see how high he can move in the coming weeks. If Wentz comes back, I'm probably not going to keep him. Christian Kirk, high floor, better than some of the other players that are out there behind him on the slate. But I need to see that consistent usage that we saw early in the season. His targets are just absolutely yo-yoing right now. 7 in week 8, 10 in week 7, week 6, 5, week 5, 3. The weeks before that, he was basically at 9 or above, except for week 2, where he caught 6 of 6. They need to target Christian Kirk. You paid him $17 billion before the season, which everybody thought was an overpay the first 3 weeks of the year. Like, well, maybe they didn't overpay him. He looks great. And then you look back at the last 5, 3 catches, 7 catches, 4 catches, 1 catch, 2 catch. Some of that is on the play calling. Some of that is on Trevor Lawrence and the roller coaster that he's been so far this year. Some weeks he's really efficient. Some weeks he looks like a second-year quarterback who's a little bit out of his depth. But, like, you need to give him early and easy opportunities to get the ball into Christian Kirk's hands and let him do things with it. And at 24, I've got Gabriel Davis. I'm always willing to take shots on the Bills offense. The last 3 weeks and 4 of the last 5, he has seen 6 or more targets in a game. There is a wide difference between his floor and his ceiling, but that ceiling possibility is what keeps him at the back end of the wide receiver twos because of how explosive this Bills offense is, can be, and has been for the last 3 seasons. So Gabe Davis, the last one of my wide receiver twos on the week. Wish you the best of luck in your matchups. Look out for another video right there.
He's a legend.